Hi there. The video you're watching is some flight footage taken from a 500mm custom quadcopter that I have just finished working on. It's a little unusual in that it has a plug removable controller stack, which allows me to take a controller stack programmed with Arducopter, replace it with one that uses iNap, and go back and forward in about 5 minutes. That leaves the motors, ESCs, the frame, landing gear, battery, gimbal, everything else on the quadcopter stays the same, which makes the comparison rather more valid. The video that will follow this brief discussion about the quadcopter was in fact not the first flight, it was actually the second flight. First one involved the quadcopter flipping over because the documentation for a Kakuti F7 version of Arducopter gives the motor sequences as 4, 1, 2, 3, and in fact the latest version of Arducopter for this board 3.6.10 has already corrected that in the hardware definition file so that it flies with the default motor orders, but I didn't know that when I flew it first. Fortunately, no damage, but this is the second flight therefore, and it includes Autotune, which you will see it begin. I didn't bother to bore you with the 14 minutes or so it takes to do Autotune, but what it does show you is the out-of-the-box flight footage of the first flight of this quadcopter, and then followed that after the Autotune with a follow-on flight where I do various things to see how Arducopter performs in this setup. So here we are taking off, first time ever successfully, and right out of the box it flew quite well. And what I did here first of all was just to leave it in hover for a while and just generally look at the downfeed video coming back from the FPV to see just how stable it appeared. And I think as you can see I was already quite impressed with the out-of-the-box tune of Arducopter 3.6.10. Here I am just generally looking at the horizon. You'll notice that there was some twitching in the yaw axis, and I think that got fixed by the Autotune because it stopped after the Autotune. So here we are just doing some left to right motions to start with. And one of the things that's wrong with iNav is that stopping motions tend to be quite abrupt and influence the gimbal. In the case of Arducopter, you can still detect it going back into position hold, or sorry, loiter in this particular case, and when it goes into loiter there's a little flick as it takes control away from your stick action, but it's really quite small, and I'm looking forward to linking Mavlink between my gimbal controller and Arducopter, which I'm told will clean that up as well. But in general, the general stability of it as I fly around my yard here was quite remarkable out of the box, and I'm not used to having a copter fly probably as good enough right out of the box. But here you can see as we just generally kind of move around and bring some yaws and so on, that the video is remarkably stable, since all I've got is basically a 3-axis gimbal with no augmentation. Here we're just doing some moving around, getting ready to do Autotune, and again I'm impressed by the general quality of the flight. At this particular point I framed myself just so I can wave to the camera, but also it gives me a chance to look at it closely to see just what kind of pixel accuracy I'm getting when it's in a park mode. We did some back motions. Now here it went into Autotune, and you can see the nasty jiggles that it does. Only left this running for a while. Turns out about halfway through the gimbal got shaken so badly that it got stuck, and so there wasn't any decent video from it after that. And now we're back on the second flight. It's now finished its Autotune, had 15 minutes in the air. Again, I put it up, put it into altitude hold, and then later on you'll hear it in the video go switch on to pulse hold. The level and the general control of pulse hold is really quite excellent. One of the things that I do quite a bit here in this part of the video is move from left to right, forward and backwards, to try to watch for the transition out of loiter into stick motion, so that you can fly around like I'm doing here, for example. And then when I let it drop back into the next, back into loiter mode, I watch to see how much perturbation that I end up seeing. Now here I'm just parked at I think about 60 feet, just again looking to see what the stability of the video looks like. And here you notice a little flick. That was as I came out on loiter into control by the sticks, and here I am flying forwards and again very smoothly. And as you take the stick off, it gently slows down, and at the very end of the slow you get that little flicker of loiter tape control. Not too bad. Now this is something I did which was just to see what happens. I'm doing basically a 45-degree descent from about 60 feet or so, just coming down at about 45 degrees. So I'm kind of in the prop wash, and in fact you can hear the prop wash warble, gives you an idea just how the Arducopter with the two handles prop wash as you come down, not doing the vertical. At the end of the flight, I did actually do an RTH, so that was also interesting to watch. Here again, I'm much lower down now, probably almost in ground effect, doing again a forward motion to see what happens, and again, remarkably smooth. Here we're going to come and do a selfie, why not? But it also gives me a chance to get a better idea, because I can now see finer detail in the shot, which will let me just see just how smoothly it's moving around, and it's pretty good. So now I'm going to do a selfie. You gotta wave at least once in every video. There we go. But again, not bad at this point. In fact, relatively impressive. Now we're going to do some more motions around the yard. In this next part of the flight, I was flying around more or less continuously, trying to avoid it going back into loiter mode, so that I could get an idea of what it was like just to fly the copter while loiter mode was switched on. You notice there I did slow down just enough that loiter mode grabbed it and you get a little flicker. But in general, compared to iNav, it's a delight to fly. Leave it in loiter mode and go and do what you wish to do. And more of the same as I generally traverse around the yard. I think at the end here I was attempting to do a turn around and come back without it going to loiter mode, but it did grab it, I think. At this point I did a return to landing point, RTL. I guess iNav calls it RTH, and here it is going up to about 60 feet, which is what I had it set, so that it didn't crash into my house when it did one. Coming back to the landing point, interestingly, although I took off facing away, unlike iNav, it came back facing me, which is fine. And here it is coming down after a very successful second flight, and I'm really looking forward to getting the Mavlink going between Arducopter and my gimbal, so that we can make some really nice videos around the area of Virginia where I live. That's goodbye for now.